Red lights spun across the ceiling of my daycare before I even heard the alarm. Then the whole station shook. Just a little. The kind of shake you feel in your teeth more than your feet. My comm buzzed so hard it nearly fell off the table. I picked it up, and a voice I did not recognize said 3 warships had dropped out of warp right outside Concordant Station. Weapons cold, but shields raised. And they were demanding to speak with me. Me. A woman who spends her mornings wiping juice off tables and separating toddlers who bite. I did not understand any of it yet. All I knew was that 6 hours earlier, a little alien girl named Skreel had scraped her knee on my climbing dome, and I had cleaned the cut and put a bandage on it, one with a smiling cartoon dog printed on the front. She had stopped crying the second she saw the sticker. That was the whole event. That was supposed to be the whole event. My name is Claire Doyle, and I run the small children's co-op on Deck 9 of Concordant Station, the deck where humans live and work alongside a dozen other species, who all decided, for reasons of trade and treaty, that living close together was worth the headache. My job is not glamorous. I keep snacks in one drawer and burn cream in another, and most days, the biggest danger I face is a toddler who can breathe a little fire when he is overtired. The comm buzzed again. Station Administrator Owen Blake this time, and his voice had the tight, careful sound of a man trying not to shout. "Claire," he said, "I need you to tell me exactly what you did to that Vertali child." "I put a bandage on her knee," I said. "That is the whole story." There was a pause so long I thought the connection had dropped. "Her mother is on the medical channel right now, screaming that her daughter's skin closed overnight with no scar," Owen said. "The Vertali have never seen that happen. Not once. Not in their whole recorded history. And now there is a diplomatic shuttle docking at Bay 6, escorted by 3 warships, and they are not smiling." I looked down at the box of children's bandages sitting on my shelf, the kind with cartoon dogs and stars on them, $4 for a box of 100 back on Earth, and I felt the first cold drop of understanding hit my stomach. Something small and ordinary to me had just become the most important object in the sector. I did not have time to think it through, because the door burst open and Ambassador Threnna Voskel walked in, tall and sharp-eyed, with 4 armed guards behind her and an expression that made my chest tighten. Vertali have 4 eyes, all pale gold, and every one of them was locked on me. "Where is my daughter?" she said, and her voice shook in a way that armed guards usually do not allow. Skreel came running from the play corner before I could answer, yelling that she still had her doggy sticker, and she yanked up her pant leg to show her mother a knee that had, 3 days ago, been an open scrape and was now smooth, clean, and closed. The ambassador dropped to her knees right there on my classroom floor and pressed her hand against her daughter's leg, like she needed to feel it was real. Then she stood, turned to me, and said words that I will remember for the rest of my life. "We require the sealing technology. All of it. Immediately." I told her it was not a technology. I told her it was a bandage, a piece of fabric with a sticky edge and a soft pad in the middle, something you could buy at any corner store on any human world for pocket change. I told her there was no formula, no secret ingredient, nothing to hide. She did not believe me. Not one word. Her guards began speaking fast in their own language, and my translator picked out pieces I did not like. Words like theft, and denial, and control. The ambassador raised a hand and they went quiet, but her eyes never left mine. "Do you understand what you are saying to me?" she said. "You are saying that something which could save thousands of our children every cycle has existed this whole time, sitting on a shelf in a room full of toys, and no one thought to mention it." I did not have a clean answer, because when she said it like that, it did not sound funny anymore. It sounded like a mistake with a body count. Within the hour, my tiny front office was packed. Owen arrived first, sweating through his collar. Then came a trade envoy from the Carthinian consulate, a broad, scaled man who wanted exclusive rights to sell what he was already calling the human miracle strip before anyone else could. Behind him walked a thin, pale Srisk officer who informed me, in a flat, careful voice, that any advanced medical technology discovered inside concordant space had to be registered under treaty law before it could be shared with anyone, and that failure to register was a serious offense. Then, worst of all, a nervous man in an expensive suit pushed through the door, introduced himself as Nathan Cole from Meridian Pharma, and said his company had heard a foreign government was trying to acquire proprietary human medical technology, and they wanted to make sure Meridian got a stake before anyone signed anything. 4 groups, 4 sets of demands, all of them shouting over a box of bandages sitting on a shelf between finger paintings and a bin of building blocks. "I need everyone to stop talking," I said, louder than I meant to. They stopped. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe nobody expected the daycare lady to raise her voice. "There is no formula," I said again, slower this time. "There is no secret. It is cotton and plastic and glue. It keeps a cut clean and a little damp while the body heals itself. That is the entire trick. Humans have known this for over 100 years. It is not classified. It was never hidden from anyone. It simply never came up, because nobody ever asked if you had bandages, and nobody on your side ever asked if we did." The S-Risk officer blinked all 3 of his eyelids at once, which I would later learn was his version of surprise. "Then why," the ambassador said quietly, "has this never been shared before now?" I did not have a fast answer for that either. 15 years of trade between our peoples, starships and reactors and star maps, traded like baseball cards, and somehow nobody had ever thought to mention something as plain as a bandage. It was too ordinary to notice. That was the whole tragedy of it. Nobody had hidden the cure. We had simply never realized it was a cure to anyone. The room went silent, and for a moment, I thought the silence would break into something worse. More shouting, more accusations, maybe even the warships outside deciding that words were done. Then Nathan Cole, the Meridian lawyer, cleared his throat and said the only thing that could have saved that meeting from falling apart. "What if nobody has to fight over this?" he said. "What if we build it together instead?" He proposed a manufacturing partnership right there, a joint deal between Meridian and the Vertali Medical Ministry, with the Carthinians allowed to buy in as a secondary partner instead of first in line, and the Srisk officer given exactly what treaty law required, no more and no less, so his paperwork would be satisfied without anyone getting a monopoly. It was not romantic. It was business. But business, it turned out, was a language every single person in that room already spoke fluently, human and alien alike. The Carthinian envoy grumbled but agreed, because a market of billions of new customers was worth more to him than a fight he might lose anyway. The Srisk officer filed his forms, discovered there was no patent left to protect, because the design had been public for longer than anyone in the room had been alive, and left looking almost disappointed that there was no conspiracy to punish. The warships outside, I later learned, stood down within the hour, once the ambassador sent word that no one intended to hide anything, and that the whole matter had already turned into paperwork instead of a fight. Threnna stayed behind after the others left. She watched Skriel show my 6-year-old helper Marcus her whole collection of stickers, chattering about which dog was her favorite, completely unaware of how close her scraped knee had come to starting something much larger than either of us could control. "I owe you an apology," the ambassador said. "We came here with warships pointed at a children's toy." "You came here because you thought someone was hiding a cure for your children," I said. "I would have done the same thing in your place. Maybe worse." She was quiet for a long moment, watching her daughter laugh. "We have a saying on my world," she said, "that scars prove we were strong enough to survive the wound. I taught that to my daughter before she could even walk. Now I look at her knee, and I do not know if that was ever wisdom, or if we only told ourselves it was wisdom because we never had a better choice." I did not have a clever answer for that, so I reached into the cabinet, pulled out a fresh box of bandages, and handed it to her. "Take these home," I said. Tell your ministry to call me directly if they have questions. It really is this simple. She held that plain little box like it was something precious, and maybe, from where she stood, it was. 3 months later, Meridian Pharma has a full production agreement with the Vertali Medical Ministry, and I am told that basic wound care is now a required class in their schools, taught using a device their scientists still insist on calling the sealing technology, capital letters and everything, no matter how many times I tell them a simpler name would do just fine. Skriel still comes to my daycare every week. She still falls off that same climbing dome more than any child I have ever met, and every single time, she runs straight to me with her knee already scraped, hand held out before I even reach for the box. Sticker? She asks. Every single time. Every single time I say yes. I once thought the biggest dangers in my job were spilled juice and overtired toddlers. I learned, in the space of one very long day, that sometimes the smallest, most ordinary thing in your hands is the one thing an entire fleet will cross the stars for, and that peace, in the end, does not always come from treaties or warnings. Sometimes it comes from a mother watching her daughter's skin heal clean for the very first time, and a woman who never once thought of herself as anything more than a caretaker, quietly changing the future of another world, with nothing more than a cotton pad and a little bit of glue.